On his first day of class, he was called to the blackboard by the professor. He confidently and unhesitatingly wrote down the correct answer. The professor was shocked and questioned how he did it. Faced with such an arrogant student, the professor was enraged. This problem was the result of half his lifetime's research. This Indian fellow just casually wrote down the answer. This intellectual made him very upset. Just this morning, he was still incredibly excited, because this was one of the oldest and most renowned universities in the world, Cambridge University, and he was a poor boy with no education or background. His ability to come here was all thanks to one person's introduction, Harold Hardy, Professor of Mathematics at Cambridge University, a leading figure in 20th century British analysis, also considered one of the most talented mathematicians of his time. This Indian student sent him a letter. It contained mathematical formulas Hardy had never seen before, proving any one of them would be enough to shake the mathematical world and earn an academician title. Hardy immediately wrote back to the young man, inviting him to Cambridge University to study these formulas with him. Unexpectedly, the young man arrived wearing slippers. Because the shoes provided by the school didn't fit, Hardy suggested he attend a few maths classes first, although his level already exceeded that of an ordinary university professor. But to achieve success here, he still had to prove his discoveries were correct to everyone. The Indian student, however, said he came here to announce his achievements, not to follow others. Then the Indian student pulled out a thick book of research findings. It contained many difficult problems that had plagued the mathematical community for years. Once announced, it would definitely be a groundbreaking discovery. Hardy had not anticipated this at all. Another top mathematician, nearby, Littlewood, was even more stunned and incoherent. But on his first day of class, he was severely scolded by the professor. After class, the Indian student was distraught. He accidentally wandered into the Wren Library. There were many marble statues here. They were all great figures, who left a significant mark on the history of human scientific civilization. He placed his hand on the foot of Newton's statue. Below it was written the sentence, "The smartest person in the world." He felt that he was the same kind of person as Newton. Perhaps only Newton, if he were alive, could truly understand him. This was not arrogance on his part, because even the famous British mathematician, Littlewood, said, "His existence is nothing short of a miracle. His talent is beyond my imagination." Not to mention Carl Jacobi. He can even compare to Newton. He is the most famous Indian mathematician in 1,000 years, and Mahatma Gandhi, Tagore, are known as Ramanujan of Indian knowledge. But who would have thought that such a once-in-a-thousand-year genius was expelled from university twice due to sever? Because he couldn't find a job, he was impoverished and struggled to survive. Thanks to Hardy's introduction, Ramanujan came to Cambridge University. Littlewood personally came to greet him, stepping into this esteemed institution. Looking at the ancient buildings full of historical charm, Ramanujan's heart was surging. Littlewood also specially introduced him to the famous apple tree. Newton discovered gravity there. Hardy and other mathematicians were waiting for him in the meeting room, but besides Hardy and Littlewood, everyone else disdained Ramanujan. They even felt that allowing an uneducated Indian youth to enter Cambridge University was an insult to them. Entering the meeting room, Ramanujan finally met Hardy, but it was not what he expected. Hardy was not friendly at all. He was cold and aloof, even refusing to shake his hand. Like those ill-fitting shoes, Ramanujan was also out of place at Cambridge University. The cafeteria food was all cooked with lard, which was very unfriendly to vegetarians like him. He was disliked by teachers in class, couldn't integrate with classmates after class. But what frustrated him most was, Hardy still hadn't published his research findings to the public. Ramanujan felt very humiliated. But Hardy was more concerned about how Ramanujan knew these formulas. Ramanujan said these formulas were just in his head. He didn't understand why he had to waste time proving them. Hardy explained, "I can understand these formulas of yours. These formulas are also correct. But intuition alone is not enough. You must provide explanations. Explain to those mediocre people, so they can understand. I'm sure you know Euler and Jacobi." Euler was the most prolific mathematician of the 18th century. Most of his achievements were completed in his mind. Jacobi, like you, came from humble beginnings, yet achieved almost as much as Euler. Now I believe you are on the same level as them. You and they both have a love for construction. But I must ask you, why do you write these? Hardy said that like Euler, you construct for yourself. These formulas are works of art created for oneself, and like all art, it reflects truth. Truth is the only thing that makes me happy. It is also my temple. And you are like Mozart, who can compose an entire symphony in his mind. You are always dancing with numbers. But to rely on this dance, this artwork, to make those who think we are just sophists start to appreciate us is impossible. It's like asking a group of atheists to believe in God's dominion, but you can't provide any evidence. What we are challenging is a mathematical field that many predecessors have attempted many times. We cannot make a single mistake, so I want you to continue attending classes. Don't offend your teachers. Continue to prove your formulas, otherwise our attempts will be futile. If we publish these formulas now, we will definitely be sent to a lunatic asylum. After saying that, he took Ramanujan to the library and told him, there are many ways to gain honor in this life. For us, being elected an academician is one way. But in my opinion, after we pass away, to leave a legacy in the Wren Library is the greatest. Here are Treasure's letters and Milton's poetry, the Morgan Bible. For us mathematicians, the most important step is still Newton's philosophy Naturalis Principia Mathematica. Newton is the material representative in our field, and your notes are the abstract representative. Even Newton took a long time to prove himself. Therefore, we have an obligation to prove these. Once we succeed, I believe one day, these notes will also have a place here. He had to tell him, no matter how great or correct a formula is, if there's no proof, it won't be recognized by the world. Its perfection and divinity exist only on the surface. Ramanujan understood this, but he still couldn't help but write new formulas. Hardy still said the same thing. Please prove it to me. This made the eager Ramanujan very distressed. After he left, Hardy picked up the paper and was shocked again. Ramanujan had actually written the formulae for integer partitions. So-called integer partitioning is to arrange and combine an integer. For example, 4 has 5 combinations. It looks simple. But if the number to be partitioned becomes 100, there will be 226 ways to partition it. This was calculated by mathematician McMahon by hand over several weeks, but Ramanujan provided a formula. As long as any positive integer is substituted, the final result can be calculated. This is simply magical and unbelievable. And before he wrote this formula, all mathematicians thought, this is impossible, even unsolvable. To get the result, one could only calculate it manually. But Hardy suppressed this achievement, because he also couldn't prove that this formula would always hold true. He forced Ramanujan to prove his formulas, and found many small errors in the proof process. This made Ramanujan very frustrated, because he himself didn't know how to prove some of the formulas. But he still insisted that Hardy publish his findings. He needed these achievements too much to prove himself. Hardy stuck to his point of view. He was an atheist. He didn't believe anyone could skip the proof process and directly arrive at an answer. If Ramanujan couldn't prove how these formulas came about, his results couldn't be published. Ramanujan got angry. He felt that Hardy was just jealous of his talent. God favored him, not Hardy. So Hardy used this method to deliberately suppress him. But Hardy took out a paper. He had already proved one of the formulas, and it had already been published, signed as Ramanujan. It was this paper that made Ramanujan stand out at Trinity College. However, the war broke out soon after. Some British soldiers couldn't stand in Indian, being able to do research at Cambridge University, while they had to go to the battlefield and die. Ramanujan was beaten and kicked by them. Actually, Ramanujan could have stayed within the campus, but he was a Brahmin and a strict vegetarian. The time, Cambridge University had enough food, but lacked vegetables. Ramanujan had to go to the streets to buy groceries, but this genius mathematician simply couldn't cook, often eating irregularly. Gradually, he began to suffer from malnutrition. Soon, nationalist sentiment spread to the campus. Some even wanted to drive Ramanujan out of Cambridge University. Hardy resisted the pressure and continued to protect him. As the war continued, even Littlewood went to the battlefield. He wrote a letter to Hardy, mentioning 2 things. First, although Ramanujan's formula was astonishing, it was actually wrong. Second, Ramanujan's existence was nothing short of a miracle. His talent was beyond my imagination. Not to mention Jacobi, he can even compare to Newton. Littlewood entrusted Hardy to never give up on Ramanujan, no matter how difficult it was. But Hardy failed to do so. He only cared about Ramanujan's formulas. He never cared about his life. He didn't know Ramanujan was a vegetarian. He had been eating irregularly, and was severely malnourished. He also didn't know that his dormitory didn't even have heating. He was frozen every night and couldn't sleep. He only knew Ramanujan was a vegetarian. 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 freezing every night and unable to sleep. And all these arrangements were just a word from him. Hardy even ignored the injuries on his face. After receiving Littlewood's letter, he immediately called Ramanujan to his office and told him in a serious tone, "Your self-declaration is wrong. Intuition can only get you so far." Ramanujan finally lost his temper. Ramanujan angrily said, "You never cared about me, let alone understood me. You are a person without faith. You don't even have a single photo here. Who exactly are you, Mr. Hardy?" Ramanujan said sorrowfully, "Do you know how much I sacrificed to come here? I have almost nothing left. Can't you see the injuries on my face?" The reason Ramanujan was so angry, besides Hardy's consistently aloof and indifferent attitude, it was also because he was alone in a foreign country. He had been relying on his wife's encouragement to persevere, but now, for some reason, his wife hadn't replied to him for a long time. Ramanujan still remembered. One night before coming to England, his wife looked at her husband's notebook and asked about the inscrutable mathematical formulas. "What's the use of these?" Ramanujan said. "You can imagine it as an invisible painting. It might not look good to you, but to me, it's everything." Although his wife didn't understand, she loved listening. Ramanujan explained, "It's like these grains of sand. If you look closely, you can see that they are individual grains. Think about it, everything has a pattern. The colours in light, the reflections on water. In mathematics, these patterns can all be expressed. It's truly beautiful. The beauty of mathematics is abstract. It's an invisible painting, a poem that cannot be read." Now he was here, all alone, not enough food or warm clothes, and often had to work late into the night. Coupled with psychological depression, he soon fell ill. But Hardy still didn't care. Even others could tell. She didn't treat Ramanujan as a human being at all. Perhaps sensing Ramanujan's emotional distress, Hardy felt some guilt. She decided to introduce him to the head of the mathematics department, McMahon. He was a pioneer in combinatorial mathematics at the time. As soon as they met, McMahon gave him a chess problem. McMahon also asked him to test himself. Ramanujan asked him to calculate the square of that 5-digit number. McMahon also blurted out the answer. A simple test proved the abilities of both of them. But McMahon still didn't believe the partition formula could hold true. So the two agreed. Ramanujan would use his formula. McMahon would calculate manually, each arriving at their own result. If Ramanujan was wrong, he would be expelled from Cambridge University. Ramanujan calculated the result in just one night. McMahon was shocked, because the error was less than 2%. McMahon was incredulous. He looked at this young Indian with new respect. But just as Ramanujan gained the appreciation of the department head, and was about to make a big impact, he unexpectedly fell ill and contracted consumption, which was considered an incurable disease at the time. Ramanujan concealed his illness and continued to prove the partition formula, and made great progress. Hardy used this achievement to nominate Ramanujan as an academician candidate. Ramanujan was very grateful. This was the honour he had dreamed of. But unfortunately, the Academy did not approve Ramanujan's application. Hardy personally came to inform him of the result. That night, Ramanujan coughed up a large amount of blood. In the middle of the night, he developed a high fever, seeing countless formulas riddling under his skin, as if they were eager to emerge. They also seemed to fear that Ramanujan would die like this. These formulas would then never see the light of day. Ramanujan rushed to the temporary hospital at the school, which saved his life. But the doctor told him his condition had worsened and he probably didn't have much time left. However, Ramanujan did not receive treatment at the hospital. He left early the next morning. He remembered his wife's letter from not long ago. Because he hadn't received a reply, she had returned to her parents' home. Talent unrecognized, loved one lost, seriously ill and full of regrets. Under multiple blows, Ramanujan felt life was meaningless. Fortunately, he was discovered in time by the staff. Upon hearing that Ramanujan was in the late stages of consumption, Hardy finally realized his indifference, negligence, arrogance and strictness almost ruined a genius. After Ramanujan fell ill, Hardy entered his dormitory for the first time. Only then did he discover his dormitory was so cold. It was simply uninhabitable. He said with remorse, "I'm sorry, I couldn't be your traditionally good friend. I know you need such a friend, but I'm not good at it. Never have been. Life for me has always been mathematics." From his words, Ramanujan felt a hint of warmth. He volunteered to confess, "You always wanted to know how I get these inspirations. Actually, it all comes from my goddess, Megiri. She told me, When I'm asleep, she would put those formulas on my tongue. Sometimes when I prayed, oracles received from her. Hardy still found it hard to believe. He couldn't believe anything that couldn't be proven. Ramanujan said, "Then you won't believe me. Don't you know? An equation means nothing to me unless it expresses the will of God." But Hardy was a staunch materialist. He didn't believe in God, nor in any ancient Eastern wisdom. However, he was willing to believe Ramanujan, believe that in this world there are really people who can plagiarize heavenly books, believe that there will be geniuses who benefit humanity. And this young man in front of him gave him that feeling. Even though he was critically ill, Ramanujan remained diligent. Soon he reduced the error rate to within 0.4. After obtaining the results, Hardy immediately worked tirelessly to secure honours for him. Cambridge University did not grant him a fellowship, so he directly applied for a fellowship at the Royal Society. In front of the academicians, he endorsed Ramanujan's work. At first, he didn't believe someone could obtain those formulas without proof. But Ramanujan changed his mind. Ramanujan passed a committee vote, becoming a Fellow of the Royal Society of London. He was also the first Asian to receive this honour. His talent and effort were finally recognised. At the same time, his wife finally received his reply. It turned out that his mother had intercepted all the letters. She was afraid that if his daughter-in-law went to England, her son would never return. The misunderstanding cleared, Ramanujan was eager to return home. He couldn't wait to go back to India. This time Hardy did not object. He had already understood, for a genius, there is only one way to protect him. That is to love him as much as possible. Before he left, Trinity College also officially elected Ramanujan as a fellow. Upon entering, all the fellows tapped their tables in welcome. Ramanujan officially became a fellow of Trinity College. By then, he had already made history, becoming a fellow of the Royal Society and a double fellow of Trinity College, Cambridge University. On the day he left, Hardy came to see him off. He complained to Ramanujan that the license plate number of the car he took was unlucky, causing him to be late. Ramanujan asked him what the number was. Hardy said 1729. Ramanujan blurted out, "This number is very interesting. It is the smallest number that can be expressed as the sum of two cubes, and has two ways of being expressed." Hardy was once again shocked, because even calculating it forwards, this conclusion was unfathomable. But Ramanujan could partition it backwards. Such talent was truly astonishing. However, 1 year later, Hardy received news of Ramanujan's death. His illness relapsed on the ship back to India, and he died a year later from the illness, at the age of 32. For Hardy, this was the most severe blow he had ever experienced. He deeply regretted not taking good care of this genius, allowing him to die tragically at the most productive age, leaving the world too soon. In 1976, a lost notebook was discovered. It contained Ramanujan's groundbreaking formulas discovered in the last year of his life. Their importance can be compared to Beethoven's 10th Symphony. A century later, these formulas were used to explain the mysteries of black holes. In an interview, Hardy was asked, what was his greatest contribution to mathematics? Hardy answered without hesitation. It was the discovery of Ramanujan. He described their collaboration as the most romantic accident of my life.